Hi guys, my name is Mallory. I'm one of the teacher trainers for NEU Pilates, and today I'm going to take you through a Jumpboard Reformer flow. So we're going to start with some preparatory warm-up movements with the jump board. Instead of getting our clients to just go right into jump board, we want to get the muscles kind of warmed up and activated. So we're going to start with some footwork using the jump board. This is a really nice one to kind of find that good solid foot foundation, getting some foot intrinsics in through here while connecting through the hips, getting the core a chance to have a chance to come on here as well. So Ava's gonna start with her feet as flat as she can onto that board. And again, we wanna try to sit that bum as deep down into those sit bones as we can. So as she pushes out, we're gonna push all the way out and her heels are gonna come back down to that board. We wanna keep that board pushing away from her. Feel the legs holding her up, feel that length through the upper body. As she comes back in, we're gonna bring her in as far as we can till the heels don't lift up off the board. And then we're gonna inhale, push her right back out. So a couple different variations we can kind of play with this, and you'll see as we kind of start going through it. But just here, we're kind of encouraging some of this like nice deep dorsiflexion through that ankle. We want to find that tripod through that foot. So she's trying to keep that big toe and that big toe mound connected, anchoring through that heel. Good. And then as you come in, or as she comes in, we're going to soften through the glutes a little bit, kind of getting more of that flexion. There we go. And then push out. Now we're gonna kind of add some variations to this. So now as you come back in, we're gonna start lifting the heels up. And then we're gonna push out from that ball of that foot. Heels come back down. We're gonna lift the heels back up and then bend and come back in. Good. Keep going. So nice long line, she's pushing that board away from her, starting to add this mobility through the ankle, that stability through that hip. She's got that nice kind of heaviness through the heels, heaviness through the tail. And then we're gonna hold out here and we're gonna keep the knees lifted and the heels lifted as we come in and out. So now we're trying to find just this push off the ball of the foot. Good. That solid kind of plant through that ball of that foot. The toes are open. We don't want to see any curling. Think about lengthening through the ball of the foot to the heel. Good. Let's go for one more. And then we're gonna change the position with the feet. So come on back in. We're gonna bring the inner thighs a little bit more into this. We're gonna step a little bit wider. So her toes and knees are gonna kind of rotate open, and we wanna find that spiral from that femur, spiraling into the kind of hip socket from here. So now we're gonna press out from here. It'll be a little bit easier for her to keep her heels flat in this turnout position. Good. That's it. And even at this end range, can you find a little bit more of that spiral through the femurs? So we want to feel those legs kind of spiraling open all the way down. There we go. Two more. Nice long line, kind of find that breath. Feel the sides of the body helping to open up. That nice heaviness for the chest, heaviness for the tailbone. Good. Last one. And we're going to come all the way back in. Okay, so we're gonna transition to a little bit of upper body, a little bit of core work here. So I'm gonna change the springs out from 3 reds to 1 red and a blue. Give you the small handles. Arms are gonna start right over top of the shoulders, or hands right over top of the shoulders, and we're gonna bring the legs up to tabletop. So we wanna keep those arms kind of plugged down to the mat. Her collarbones, her shoulders are nice and wide and set, and that sternum, back of her heart is heavy to the mat. Nice long line through that upper body. So when you're ready, we're gonna take the arms forward and pull down to the hips, and we're gonna hold. So as much as she's pressing her hands down to the mat, we wanna feel her reaching her arms towards that jump board, helping to find that length and that lift up through that rib cage. But she's trying to make her upper body, she's trying to hold her upper body up away from her hips. Keep that space, keep that connection, arms back to the ceiling. Good. I'm gonna cue an inhale on the way down and exhale back up. Avery, if that breath pattern doesn't work for you, you can change it. As long as your clients are breathing, not holding their breath. Good. A little heavier through that tailbone, a little heavier through the sternum. Good, so we're gonna keep the hands down beside you, tuck the elbows nice and tight in, little tricep press. Can you bend and extend the elbows without that rib shifting forward, keeping that heaviness, keeping that little scoop through the belly. 2 more. Elbows a little bit closer to you. Good. Last one, keep those arms in front of you. Now keep pushing those straps towards that foot bar. Keep hugging that sternum down and into the mat. We're gonna extend the right leg out, so going into our core work. Exhale, bring it back in. Inhale, left. Good. So this is kind of the starting position of jump board. Kind of finding that nice kind of long, hovering, kind of supine plank position here. Challenging that stability. One more to the left. Bring the heels together. Now double leg reach. Think about your breath. Opening and feeling that lift, that hover off the low half. Good. We want to keep that tail kind of curled. Reach out. There we go. Pull it back in. Try not to let those ribs and those hips kind of shift away. Last one. Legs back in, arms to the ceiling. Okay, we're gonna transition with some resistance into the legs. So we're gonna stay on that red spring, that blue spring, and we're gonna pop your feet into those big straps. Once we've got the feet into the straps, we wanna keep the legs at tabletop. We're gonna try to keep the knees, ankles, and inner thighs sort of somewhat close together here. So she's gonna start by giving me a little bit of pressure into my hand. And this is just gonna give her a chance to find that glute, sitting into that connection a little bit more. Heavy through that sternum, nice and light with the upper body. She's gonna take an inhale and stretch her legs out. Good, keep that pressure into my hand. There we go. And then that exhale as we come back in helps to plug those femurs into that hip socket. Good. So she's maintaining this pressure and her contact into my hand, even though it kind of goes against the grain of what she wants to do on the way back in. Open the bottom of the feet. There we go. Okay, and we're gonna change this movement. We're gonna press it out, hold it open. Keep that reach through my hand. Keep this nice long line through that whole body. And we're gonna take those feet all the way up to the ceiling. Hold here. Feel this length through the bottom of the foot. Feel this length through this hamstring. Sit into my hand, reach for my hand. Now use that to pull your heels back down. Really nice. Now as we go up, she's gonna stretch from that space of the glute all the way through that hamstring to the heels, right through those nice open feet. Good, keep going. Press forward. So right here is essentially gonna be her mid-range of her jump board position. We need that core, we need those legs, those glutes, everything to be turned on so that she's not recruiting from that low back. There's no arching, chest, ribs are staying nice and heavy into the mat. 2 more. Good. And again, she's keeping really nice contact of her heels to my hand as we come down and as we go back up. We're gonna hold at the top. I'm gonna take an inhale, split the legs open. Feel those inner thighs release. These guys need to let go. Open out to the side. As she pulls down with the heels and the bum forward, she's gonna circle around, bring the legs back together, straight back up to the top. Let that tension through the hips and the pelvis relax as you open out. Feel that length, like you're trying to stand up to get those legs back under you. Let's do one more in this direction. So it's not just about the legs and the movement to the upper body or the lower body. The upper body is very, very integrated through here. So we're gonna reverse those circles. Straight down through center, reach for the bum, reach for the heels. Hold this beautiful long line. Inner thighs sweep open. She still has to press through those straps to bring her feet back around. Good, couple more. Feel that length through the bottom of the foot, the inner thigh, all the way up to that spine. And she gets that nice pull of the adductors back together. She's not just kind of letting the legs swing in. Let's go for one more. Open that bottom of that foot just a little bit more. There we go. She's wanting to kind of curl that left toe a little bit. Opening up through there is gonna give her a little more of that length. Good, and then we're gonna bend the knees. Come all the way back in. Let's pop your feet out of those straps. So I'm just gonna place the straps at the back of the reformer so they're not clanking in her ears as we go into jump board. We're gonna drop down to one red spring and we're gonna get into a little bit of a glute connection for her legs. So we're gonna try to find, again, this nice tight position, the inner thighs, the knees and ankles right together. And we're gonna try to again start with that flat foot position. Now not every client is gonna be able to get this low to that foot bar and that's okay. But we are gonna see if we can sit a little bit deeper into that bottom of that sit bone. Can we anchor the tailbone? Can we anchor through the upper body? Do you feel like you need to adjust anything before we move you? Okay. All right, so she's gonna take her first little hop here. So what's gonna happen, she's gonna take an inhale and she's gonna jump and push that board away from her. You're gonna see her heel starting to raise up. You're gonna see her arch starting to raise up. And then the last thing to leave the board is her toes. She keeps that nice long line and that point through the toes. Toes are the last thing to leave the board and the first thing to make contact. And then she rolls back through that forefoot, the arch, the heel. We want to bring it back into that nice deep position through here. The more she sits down and stretches those glutes, the more they can contract to spring her up. And as she's going through this movement, this one red spring is not that heavy. There's not a lot of tension in these legs. We don't need to go 150% here. If she overpowers the legs, she's not going to be able to control the core. You're going to see that low back, the ribs arching up. So we want a nice soft springy jump and a nice soft quiet landing. Can you make the upper body feel a little bit lighter? There we go. We got that spring, that push right from the bottom of that foot. Think about using that ball of the foot to push the board away from you. Soften through the chest, soften through the neck. We're gonna add some variations to this. So you're gonna jump out, and then the next one you're gonna jump, and when you land, you're gonna jump and open your feet and then close. So jump, little open, and close. Good. So we can kind of start playing with some of these variations here, and you can get creative with it. The movement doesn't have to be big. We're just adding this little open and close with the inner thighs. Good. Now can you jump out and can you land with your feet wider on the board? Good. And then can you jump out and land with your feet narrow on the board? So now we're kind of going from this little wide-legged, open and close. Again, kind of adding some variations to it. Let's do one more. Good. Go back to single or to just the center jumping in and out. Now on your next one, you're gonna jump out, and when you land, you're gonna turn and land with both toes facing to the left. Sit into that glute, good, push, jump, and we're gonna jump the opposite direction. So almost like a little ski slalom. And you wanna watch that their knees are trying to stay in the same line and their hips are staying in the same line. Again, we need that length from each side of the body. Let's go one more. One more to the opposite side. Come back to center, couple jumps through center, just realigning. One more. And then take a little moment here to pause. Okay, so we're gonna step a little bit wider. She's gonna come back to that wide position, toes and knees again are gonna rotate open. So we're gonna come right to the corner of that jump board, and everyone's jump boards are gonna be a little bit, step forward, there we go. A little bit of a different position. Some people have a little bit wider, some are longer. We're working a little bit smaller kind of range here. So we're gonna really have to find that rotation coming from that spiral of those femurs. Again, she's gonna sit nice and deep into that. There we go, and I close that carriage. Now we're gonna start finding again that power and that light push from the foot, that spring as it takes her open. Now she has to jump and keep those legs in that wide turnout. Good. Couple more. Find that control through the core, that heaviness. There we go. Think about reaching for a nice straight line from the inner thigh all the way down to that big toe. Let's go for 3 more. 2, stay nice and wide. There we go. And last one. And then come all the way back in. So we're gonna transition to a little more core work for the jump board. We're gonna go a little bit lighter with the spring. It's gonna create more time to come in and out, which means that her body has to hold that long position a little bit longer. So it's gonna put a lot more effort and emphasis on that core stability. Coming back to that Pilates V position, we're gonna go nice and light here with the jump. The springs are about half the tension that we started with the legs, so she doesn't have to put as much effort into the legs, but the core now has to work a little harder to hold her out here. So take a couple jumps, just kind of see how different that spring feels. And again, she's leaving, kind of pushing the board away from the toes, and the toes are the next thing or the last thing to kind of touch as she comes back on. As we're going through this, she's gonna feel like a little zipper from the toes, all the way up to the inner thigh, all the way up to that midline of her core. So this is really important that we get this core here because we don't want that low back or those ribs arching and lifting off of that mat. She's trying to keep this length and that little hammock through that belly. Good. Couple more, nice and heavy. Good. last one. And again, we're gonna add a few variations to this. Before we go into the variations, I'm actually gonna change her position. So kind of flatter on the carriage is gonna be sort of your baseline where you'd start your clients with this. We're gonna add a little bit more of a core challenge to it. So you're gonna interlock your hands, behind your head, come into a curl up. So this is a little bit kind of that next step taking into the advancement of this movement. I actually think it's a little bit easier because it helps you to give a little bit more of that contraction through that core. So it brings a little bit more attention to that anchoring of her mid back. So let's just start a few jumps with that Pilates V position. We'll go in and out from here. Good. So you can see how she's having to maintain more of that contact of her thoracic and her mid back onto the mat. We're not arching, we're not tipping. And now we're gonna start adding some variations with the legs. So she looks nice and stable. As she jumps out, we're gonna do a little tight crisscross with the ankles. It's a small movement. We're trying to find that movement coming from the ankles. We don't want the knees flopping around. That nice length and reach for the legs. Good, we'll go for one more. And then we're gonna come back in and we're gonna try a couple single leg jumps. So we're gonna keep the right leg onto the bar. Left leg will come to tabletop. So she's gotta keep this leg just as active, holding there as she's jumping with just the right leg. Good. So then we can start kind of in this single tabletop position as we add that jump, and we can kind of play around again with some variations. So as she jumps out and comes in, she's gonna extend the opposite leg away from the board. So now you've got one leg extending, one leg bending. Think about an equal push-pull through each leg. Come into that curl a little bit more. And then just to add a little bit more variation into this, as she jumps out and this leg pulls in, she's gonna add a little twist, that right elbow towards that left knee.
One elbow.
There we go. Good. So brain power and some muscle power. Let's go for one more. Now this time as you jump out, can you switch legs and land on the left? So now we're just gonna jump in and out with the left leg. Right leg's gonna hold tabletop. It's gonna give her a chance to kind of feel how this side of the body has to hold and work a little bit different than the first. And then as she's ready, she's gonna land and extend that right leg over the board. She's gonna jump, pull it back in. As she's going through this movement, again, equal push-pull with those legs. Good. And then the next jump or so, when she pulls that right leg in, she's gonna add that twist of the left elbow to that right knee. Good. Curl, scoop into it. Good. Keep the shoulders wide, the elbows wide. Nice. Last one. Come back to center, stay in your curl, and then just jump in and out through both legs. And then we're gonna add a little alternating jump. So jump in and out. Let's bring the right leg up to tabletop and then switch in the air. Good. There we go. Like a nice little hop, like a spring, a skip through a nice flowy, flowery meadow. We want it to be light. We want it to be nice and flowy, back and forth. Keep pulling one leg in, keep reaching with the other. Let's go one more to each side. Coming all the way back in. Both feet, and then we're just gonna finish in and out through center. Okay, so we're gonna add another variation in through core. Getting tired out. Okay, we're gonna add another variation with the core. So if clients have a really hard time, especially with their neck, holding that position, but they do need a little bit more support with that curl position, we're gonna add a ball. We're gonna bring that ball kind of behind their low bra line, behind their low kind of shoulder blades. So that ball is gonna help to kind of give a little bit more of that support for her to find that curl. Again, it's also gonna offer a little bit more of that contraction onto the curl. Does that feel, do you wanna move forward or back?
Okay.
Over there. Okay, so we're gonna again just start with that Pilates V position, kind of using this as our baseline here, sitting into the glutes, and then we're gonna jump out. As she jumps, what we're looking for is that she doesn't get lighter and lift off that ball. We actually want her ribs to kind of tuck in and hold low onto that ball. Really good. That's it. Soften through the sternum, curl through here. There we go. So she's holding this rib down and in as she jumps, rather than it kind of popping and bringing her up. So now let's kind of play with some of those variations. Let's jump out, add that little crisscross. Good. Again. One more. Good. Let's try that single leg jump. So right leg Jumps, left leg holds that tabletop position. Good. So now this kind of curl of that ball is helping her to stay a little bit more centered. She's not kind of getting kicked forward and back. And let's try a couple jumps with the left leg. Good. Right leg holds that tabletop, shin nice and parallel to the ceiling. Let's try one more. Good. And then come all the way back in, and let's give you a little break from there. Come on up. So we can still use the jump board for a few other variations. Doesn't have to just be jumping. Let's bring you into a nice little mermaid position. Okay. So I'm gonna have you facing this direction. You're gonna bring your left knee and ankle against the shoulder blocks. Right leg will fold in front. We're gonna go back to one red spring. And then we're gonna bring the palm of your hand onto that board. So now she doesn't have the safety grip of holding onto that foot bar. She's gotta kind of keep that tension between her hand and that board. This arm's gonna come out. She's gonna take a big inhale, come up and over. She's pushing that board away from her. She's trying to push herself and anchor herself into this hip. Keeping that push to that hand and that hip as she stacks and brings herself back up. We're gonna inhale, feel like we're opening through those ribs. Those ribs are reaching and arching up towards the ceiling. Rib cage stays softened in. Good. And then this time we're gonna press all the way out to come up and around with that left hand. Both hands, both palms hit that board. So she's pressing in, bring your hand a little wider. She's pressing that board away from her. This is holding her out here. We're gonna come into a nice thoracic extension. She's gonna shift forward, lengthen, and bring that spine up. And then she's gonna push out and lengthen, open. She's trying to keep this hip anchored and these hands anchored as we move forward and up. Push into my hand a little more and all the way back. One more, nice and long through both sides of the body. This time we're gonna push all the way out and we're gonna hold that nice low line. Eyesight stays to the floor. She's gonna come in for a little push-up. Elbows, shoulders again go wide. And then we're gonna push right back out. So again, she's having to use her whole body to hold and open that spring, that carriage. Let's go for one more. Press all the way out, stay strong with that right arm. Left arm releases, it's gonna come all the way up and we're gonna do a little counter stretch. We're gonna land with that hand on the shoulder block, opposite to the one by her knee. Again, we're gonna sit up, grow up nice and tall, feel that lift through the rib cage. As you exhale, she's gonna pull and hug this right rib towards her left hip. Inhale, float tall, stay tall, exhale, rotate. So she's using, again, the rib cage, those obliques to kind of pull her around. She's not torquing with her shoulders, she's not torquing with her neck. Last big breath. And then unravel, and we'll have you do the same stretch on the other side. So facing the opposite direction, she's gonna have her right knee and ankle against the shoulder block, left leg folds in front. And as, again, we kind of press out, she's having to hold that space between her left hand as her right arm comes up and over. And kind of finding that reach, that arch, lifting up. Keeping that anchored as she comes back down. And you'll kind of see how her hip wants to kind of follow suit, but now she's able to anchor it a little bit more and we get more of that flexion, more of that arch. Really nice. Let's go for one more. Ribs stay back just so there's no arch in the back. Good. And then on this next one, we're gonna come up and around. We're gonna rotate, reach, feel that length that she creates through here, all the way around. Both hips, again, nice and anchored, both side bodies. We're gonna pull her in a little bit more rotation. Good, arms stay nice and straight. We're gonna lengthen forward and up. And then as she pushes back, she's pushing the whole trajectory of that carriage back behind her. She gets that nice open, so as we come forward and up, there's nothing kind of constricting her for coming into that extension. Equal push through both hands. Good. Last one. This time as she pushes out, we're gonna stay in that nice low line, eyesight again stays to the floor. I'm gonna encourage her to rotate those right ribs a little bit closer. Good, now we're gonna try to keep that rotation as she takes those shoulders and the elbows, again, nice and wide. We're kind of opening out. Bend, come in. She's feeling the trajectory go east to west from the armpit to the elbow. She's holding this length through the side bodies, that nice anchoring through the hips. Really nice. Last one. Push out. We're gonna stay nice and strong. Keep this arm pushing into that board. As this one releases, it's gonna windmill up and around to the block by her foot, opposite to the knee. Again, we're gonna encourage that breath to inhale, lift up tall. Exhale, she's now gonna feel that left rib pull around towards that right hip. Inhale, we grow tall. We wanna stay tall so we can feel that oblique, that rotation. And like we're wringing out a spine like a wet towel. One more full breath. Good. Then we're gonna unravel, come on back to center. So we're gonna take this into a little bit of a transition through the upper body, kind of again, playing with some variations of the springboard. We're gonna go nice and light, kind of that quarter spring or that half spring, whatever option you have on your reformer. I'm gonna get Avery to come up onto a low kneeling position. Knees are gonna come right to the front edge of that board. Hands are gonna come onto that jump board and we're gonna start nice and wide. I'm gonna ask her to come into a little bit of a hinge forward with her body. So we just did this position, kind of prepped her in that mermaid position. She has to stay anchored in her hips, her spine and her core holding her out. Elbows come out nice and wide. We're now gonna use her hands to jump and push her back. And then she's gonna have a nice soft landing, wide elbows, wide shoulders. Now as she's jumping out, we don't want the trajectory of her body going with her hands. We want her to feel like she's pushing and anchoring herself back into her hips. Sternum or ribs are staying strong, side bodies are staying long. Relax through the glutes, let yourself sit into those hips. Good. And then again, we can play and add some variations here. So she's gonna jump out and she's gonna do a little lift and lower with the arms. They're gonna come up to about forehead height. They don't have to come all the way overhead. Again, kind of based on what range of motion is offered for your client. So now can we find a little bit more push? There we go. Using and recruiting that core. Now she's starting to get a little bit more of that trajectory pushing back. It's not just from the shoulders. And then we're gonna kind of change this position again. We're gonna jump out and she's gonna add a little up and over rotation and then come back in and land. Very nice. And again, both arms are equally reaching in opposite directions. Good. Let's go one more to each side after this. And last one. Really nice. And then come on back in. Okay, so we're gonna finish with kind of one of my favorite positions, another variation on the jump board, but we're gonna come into hands and knees. So we're gonna get you to turn and face the back of the reformer. Hands are gonna come up onto the shoulder blocks. Knees are kind of stacked right underneath those hips. And I'm gonna go back to a one red spring setting on here. So she's now gonna have to hold this really beautiful 4-point position here in tabletop. We're gonna take the right leg back onto that board and I'm gonna get you to push out to a straight leg. So this is gonna be kind of her end range of the position. We wanna kind of keep those hips nice and level and square, shoulders a little bit more over those wrists, there we go, and she's gonna puff up right between those shoulder blades. So now kind of challenging this position, the stability as we start adding this jump. So she's gonna bend, come in, and she's just gonna do a couple pushes ins and outs, just kind of nice and light, getting used to that position. And again, we don't want the trajectory of this movement shoving you forward. We want you to feel like you're pushing that board away from you. Your upper body is holding you forward, holding that length. Push up through here. There we go. So keeping the other 3 limbs nice and strong. Ribs lift up a little bit more, sternum stays in, nice, good sit back into there. We're gonna go for a couple more. The more she sits into it, the more jump she's gonna get there. Last 2. And last one, and then come on back in. We're gonna do the same thing to the other side. And of course with this movement, there's again lots of variations we can add into it. We can add a kick out to the side. We can add kind of a bit more of an arm reach if we want. But we're just gonna do the basic one here for today. So again, kind of finding that nice stack of the shoulders over the wrists, the hips over the knee, and we wanna keep those hips nice and level. Good, sitting into it nice and deep, and then that nice jump out. And she's doing a really, really nice job of her pace. We don't have to speed through this, right? Even though it is a jump kind of cardio movement, she's focusing on the stability and the control of the movement. Sternum up just a little bit, there we go, that's it. A little more lift through this hip, and a little bit more reach of that foot. Push that board away from you, there we go. Use the breath, help. Nice, now she's starting to get a little bit more of that launch, a little more of that spring. One more. And then come all the way back in. Come on down to your knees. We're gonna round into a child's pose. Couple breaths into the hips and the low back, just letting that go. And there's our reformer jump board flow for today.